Okay, so I have a pretty empty shelf here because that shelf usually holds the physical versions of my favorite books of the year. And what are we talking about today? My favorite books of the year. This is very exciting. If you're new here, hi, my name is Chantal. I read lots of sci-fi fantasy, sprinkled a little bit of horror, and a little bit of everything else. Comics, graphic novels, manga too, obviously, as you will see. What I'm going to do in this video is I am going to break it down into 3 sections. My first section is going to be my honorable mentions. I have 10 books in that category. My second section are going to be series. These are going to be books that I read in a series, whether I read one or multiple in a series. So I think I have about 5 of those. And then I'm going to have my top 10 books. So my honorable mentions and my series are not going to be ranked whatsoever, but my top 10 are going to be in ranked order because I was thinking, do I have it? I knew like 1 or 2 books were my top, but can I do this? Yeah, it was easy. I got a lot of books to talk about. Let's just do it. Okay, first honorable mention is going to be Frieren Beyond Journey's End. I read volumes 1 and 2 this year, and the reason it's not in a favorite series is because I enjoyed them and I enjoyed what they're doing, but they weren't quite like, 5-star favorites yet. This was a really popular anime this year, and this is essentially a fantasy series, manga series about Frieren, an elf, when her D&D party essentially ends their quests. She goes off on her own, comes back after 50 years, and the human hero of the quest of their group has died. And Frieren kind of goes on this emotional, mental journey, trying to figure out, how to connect better with people. Because in her head, she's an elf, she lives thousands of years, and she doesn't really understand the concept of people living short lives, so she doesn't really connect with people. This kind of sets her off on this emotional journey. And then also she starts, as far as volume 2 goes, 1 and 2, she starts collecting new party members essentially. So I'm gonna take these off, I'm warm. So I really liked the sort of like slice of life cozy feels of this, but also it was very melancholy because of how Frieren is dealing with a lot of these emotions and trying to deal with connection. And then volume 2 kind of picked things up, so it's not quite as, for me, it's not, slice of life is not boring, but I can see how it can be a little boring for people. So it picks up on an actual like story thread, and there's a bit more action, a lot of dismemberment in volume 2. But I really like it. It's on track to be something that I'm really enjoying, and maybe next year it'll be on, top favorites of the year. My next honorable mention is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I picked this up essentially because I kept hearing good things. It won the Pulitzer. This cover is great. I loved this colorful Barnes & Noble edition versus the regular like gray edition, gray and like tan edition. And I was kind of shocked at how much I really got into this. The first line of it, I read it at the bookstore, and that's essentially what got me picking this up. What I read was, first, I got myself born. A decent crowd was on hand to watch, and they've always given me that much. The worst of the job was up to me, my mother being, let's just say, out of it. So, very strong character happening in those first lines. And I was like, okay, we're going to have a great character story here, and it was fantastic. I was just along for the ride with this very just focused, real, as I was reading it, voice to me. And I am still surprised at how much I liked this. So, honorable mention. Next honorable mention is Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. I only have the dust jacket because our housemate borrowed it after she watched I forget the name of the movie, but Anna Kendrick's movie, the recent movie about a serial killer, the dating game movie, that one, whatever that movie is called. I think it's The Dating Game, but essentially that movie. And she was telling me about the movie and how it focuses on Anna Kendrick's character and the women of the story. And I was like, hey, this book does the same thing, essentially with Ted Bundy. So this is kind of like being shoved more in the mystery thriller, but no, this is essentially historical fiction with a crime at the center of it. What this does is it doesn't explicitly say it's about Ted Bundy. He is never named in this, but it's Ted Bundy. This is the story of, he went into a sorority house in Florida and attacked and murdered some of the girls. And one of the girls, the house mother, she kind of saw him when he was leaving. He didn't really see her because she was in the darkness and he was in a puddle of light as he was leaving. And so she's a witness, and it follows her and other victims of Ted Bundy, or, you know, people who are related to victims of Ted Bundy, as they navigate a world that doesn't center their voices, doesn't care, a very misogynistic world. And it was just fantastic. I loved the main characters that we follow. I loved, is it Pamela? Yeah, Pamela. Pamela is amazing. I loved following her. It was great. It was great. And I really highly recommend this. Even if you're not into true crime, this is still a really great book that centers women's voices. It's fantastic. Next, I have The Water Outlaws by S.L. Huang. This is a Chinese-inspired historical fiction, very wuxia martial arts fantasy, centering a woman and other non-binary, transgender, female-presenting characters. This woman is very upright. She has followed everything that society wants of her. She works in the military, and then something happens and she is branded a traitor, and she is sent to a work camp, except these bandits break her out and take her into their bandit camp, and she has to become a bandit. And she falls into this life where these bandits are all trans women, trans men, non-binary folks, women. They're just trying to survive and help the people in the land around them thrive. And it's just fantastic. There's a lot of characters, and I can see where some people may kind of bounce off of it, but I just was so into it. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the theming. I enjoyed the action. I enjoyed the sort of dark tone that sobers a lot of what can feel like silly action. It was just fantastic for me from start to finish, so that is why it's on this list. Next, I have Floating Hotel by Grace Curtis. This is a sci-fi book that has been kind of comped to Becky Chambers' Wayfarer series. I would say yes, but not quite the same level of character relationship that you might, like, if what you loved most out of that is the character relationships, this doesn't quite hit that level, but it's doing something similar. This takes place on a floating, essentially a space cruiser hotel. Our main linchpin is this character who ends up on it when he's a young child, and he is put to work because he's essentially a stowaway. He's put to work, and he essentially lives his entire life working for this hotel and loves it. We're with him like when he's like in his 40s or 50s. And we don't just follow him, we get a chapter from a different character, so other crew of the hotel, we get guests of the hotel, and as we get each chapter, as things move along, this has a lot more plot and a lot more world building than I was expecting. Like, as each character chapter moves along, we get a really great chunk of information of how this world works, what is happening with the main story. There's a mystery. Like, I was just so surprised at how much I was enjoying getting each not reveal, but like how each chapter was opening up the world and the story more. It was really great. Like, I really enjoyed this. I think this is flying under the radar, but I highly recommend this. I really liked it. The only reason it's not like in my favorites, like top 10 favorites, is because I liked the other books of my favorites more than this, but that's why it's an honorable mention. It's really great. And this is one of my favorite covers of the year. Like, it's just really beautiful. Yeah, so Floating Hotel. Next, I have Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. It's starting to seem like if Chuck Tingle's going to release a new horror book every year, the horror book's going to end up in my favorite reads of the year every year. Camp Damascus last year was one of my favorite reads. I really liked Bury Your Gaze. My husband read it and he loved this. He loved Camp Damascus and this. We had a lot of good conversation out of it. My book club read it and we had a lot of great conversation. I love what Chuck is doing, exploring the queer experience through various horror lenses. Camp Damascus was about an autistic teenager and a gay conversion camp. This is about a Hollywood screenwriter and lots of horror stuff that he's going through, but also the concept of gay tragedy. Bury Your Gays is about gay tragedy essentially in Hollywood, TVs, movies, and also gay joy, and just, it's so good. I highly recommend like what Chuck Tingle's doing. If all you know of Chuck Tingle is Pounded in the Butt by My Own Butt, definitely check out his horror works. His silly Tinglers, his erotica is just as valid as these, but if those are not for you, check out the horror. It is not anything like those. It is straight up horror novels with very interesting Chuck Tingle flavor, in the sense of like he comes up with really interesting, wacky ideas, and I just highly recommend it. I recommend Cat Mastis, and I recommend Bury Your Gaze as well. Next is a T. Kingfisher. I love T. Kingfisher, and I'm so happy this year that I can say that I really liked A Sorceress Comes to Call. I think I got an e-arc of this, so thank you NetGalley and Tor.com for that. Or Tor Books. This is apparently a mythical retelling-ish take on the Goose Girl. If I didn't know that, I don't really know the Goose Girl, so I went onto the Wikipedia page and read the basic like fairy tale of it, and then I was reading the book, and I was like, yeah, okay, I can see Goose Girl kind of. So this is sort of, I want to say it's inspired by the Goose Girl. We'll put it that way. This is a story of a young girl who is essentially emotionally manipulated, abused by her mother, magically abused by her mother as well. And they go to, her mother is trying to ensnare a new man to marry. And our second main character is the sister of this man. So she's like 50 years old, and the sister has this feeling of doom is going to arrive, and doom is our young main character's mother. And the story ensues as both of them, or the woman is trying to figure out how to keep her brother from falling for this woman, and how the young girl is going to break free of her abusive mother. The way their stories come together is fantastic. T. Kingfisher's writing is always great for me. It always hits. Even though I didn't really like Thornhedge last year, it was still good. I'm just so happy that this was fantastic. I really enjoyed this one. So if you're, I would say in the like ranking of like recent T. Kingfisher for me, I would say Nettle Bone's still up here, and then A Sorceress Comes to Call. No. Nettle and Bone, A House of Good Bones, A Sorceress Comes to Call, Thornhedge. Next is The Stardust Grail by Yume Kitase. This is a sci-fi adventure that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this for what it was doing, what it was trying to do. Sort of a, I want to say like alien, or a main character is human. She has an alien best friend, and they sort of had this career of being thieves essentially, but they would steal from museums and return alien artifacts to the original alien people, stuff like that. But they were also, stealing for themselves for money. The alien character is part of this alien race where they have this sort of hive mind, but a war happened, and so many of their people were killed that they lost the memory of how to procreate and reproduce. And this alien character wants children so badly, and all they remember is there's maybe this, essentially a holy grail that can help them reproduce. And when word comes of this grail maybe existing, the two of them team up again and take off on an adventure to try to track it down. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on here, a lot of fun. It gets weird. It does get weird, and I think a little bit of the pacing, suffers from a little bit of the weirdness. It has made me very interested in this author's works. I do want to read her debut, The Deep Sky. I know those who enjoyed this didn't like The Deep Sky as much, but I do want to read it. And then if this author keeps trending towards better and better books, she's definitely going to be someone to keep an eye out for just really interesting, fun sci-fi. The Stardust Grail, you should check it out, especially if you want more sci-fi, unlike the Goodreads Choice Awards, but I'm gonna let that go. All right, next honorable mention I have is In the Shadow of the Fall by Toby Ogundarin. Let me get this cover here. We have beautiful representation. This is essentially a novella story based on Yoruba mythology. So essentially we have a character. She is a young girl. She is an acolyte of this religion where she's supposed to have gone into the temple and heard from the Orisha, but she hasn't, and a couple of years past the time when she should have done that. She is desperate and does an illicit spell to try to force them to talk to her, and they do, and things ensue from there. It's very short, so I'll keep it at that, but I really liked this. It does feel a bit young because of how young her character is, but it's just so, I don't know what the word is. Not charming, but I really liked the world that the author was playing in here. I liked the main character, and even though you kind of like, some of it may feel a little predictable, it's predictable in a fun way. It's predictable in a way where, yeah, it's the same tropes you've seen over and over again, but they're being done through a different lens. And I had a good time with it. The second novella is coming out in a couple of months, and I'm very excited about that. It's going to be a duology, and I very much recommend this. So, and again, beautiful cover. My last honorable mention is a graphic novel. This is Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. This is Berenstain Bears or Richard Scarry if the main character was Dexter. Essentially, anthropomorphized animals, but our main character is a bear and she is a serial killer. And every few months she goes off from her little town. She drives hours away to the big city to find someone to murder and dismember, to quiet the voices in her head, and she comes back. But somebody in her town begins murdering people very horrifically, and she decides to try to find who's doing it before the police accidentally find out about her. I really enjoyed this. I think this juxtaposition of the anthropomorphized cute animals against the gore of the serial killing, it's not the most original idea, but it's done really well here. It's done really well. And when I say gore, I mean it. So just, be a little aware when you go into this of, it's gory. It's not, I don't think it was distasteful. The story is great. I think the ending wraps up a little too quickly, but overall, I think it was just a fantastic story. Great idea, great execution, great art, all around fun. So those are my honorable mentions. Let us move on to my favorite series entries that I read this year. Okay, these are going to be, I think the order that I wrote them down is essentially the order in which I liked them. Starting at, this level, I hate to say least favorite, but it's like least favorite of my favorites to all-time favorite of my, not all-time favorite, but like most favorite of my favorites. So, first, Terra Ignota. By Ada Palmer. The first book is Too Like the Lightning. I read it on audio. This is the second book, Seven Surrenders, and I also finished it this year. I thought it was gonna blaze through the last two books in this series. It's 4 books, but like I said, have I said in this video? I think I said it in this video, but December has not been a reading month for me. It just hasn't. So I kind of put that on pause, and I'm just going to revisit it once I feel up to reading something that's dense again. So I have gone on and on about this in the past few couple of like weekly wrap-ups and monthly wrap-ups, so I'm not going to keep going on here. This is a very interesting thought experiment. It's a utopia, our world in a couple hundred years, where there's different forms of government and different forms of belonging to essentially, there are no nations anymore, not really. You belong to kind of hives, so like belonging to a certain type of people who feel and think and look at the world the same way you do. And what happens when that world starts to crack at the seams and face war, when they haven't experienced war in hundreds of years and have no idea what's to come. So we have a main character whose voice is very distinctive. I did have Too Like the Lightning. I owned the ebook for a couple of years. I tried reading it 2 or 3 times and I bounced off it each time. Then I finally got the audio because it was narrated by Jefferson Mays, who does The Expanse. I really love him. And he brought it to life for me. And through the audio, the writing kind of clicked and I was able to like enjoy it so much. And then I was able to read physically with no issues. I really enjoyed this. That's why this is here. It's at the bottom of my favorites because I'm still only 2 books in and I'm still ruminating on everything. I need to finish the whole series. and finish seeing what this thought experiment is before I really cement how I feel truly about it. But I have been so overjoyed with this. It clicks all of the philosophy part of my brain that I haven't really used since I was in university, my BAs in philosophy. Do with that what you will. And it's lighting up a lot, like part of my brain that, I haven't used since I was in college. So, Terra Ignota on this list for sure. Next is The Innkeeper Chronicles by Ilona Andrews. I read 4.5 books in this series this year. This is urban fantasy, except all the paranormal creatures are actually aliens. The vampires are from other planets. Werewolves originated from a different planet. There are a bunch of alien species, and there are these inns on Earth, kind of like waypoints, neutral territory where people can stay on Earth and they're protected. And our main character is an innkeeper, and when she's on the grounds of the inn, she has a lot of magic, and it's great. It hits the part of my brain that loves urban fantasy. Ilona Andrews just does that for me. This is the first Ilona Andrews on this series list. There is another. So Ilona Andrews, they write urban fantasy that just works for me so much. And this is doing it for me. It's not my favorite of their series by far, no, but I really enjoy what they're doing, and it's a lot of fun. Next, I have my beloved Yona of the Dawn. This year I read volumes 41 and 42. I love this series so much. I can't tell you what these are about, but I can tell you this is a series where it's essentially historical fantasy where our young teenager Yona, her father is murdered. She's forced on the run, and essentially she goes from spoiled princess to badass, and she collects a group of essentially fantastical men with magic, fantastical people, and they all become this tight-knit found family as a lot of political stuff grows, and this has become. It's a very long, slow burn romance. It is found family. It's hugely political drama. It's so good. Every single volume is an instant 5-star for me. I actually start at 5 stars, and these volumes would have to do something incredibly fucking drastic for me to rate them anything less than 5 stars. Now, volume 42, made me feel feels, and I am scared of where things are going from here, but I love this series so much, and you should give it a try. Give it, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 volumes, I think, and I think about 3 or 4 volumes is essentially enough to get a really good solid idea of where this is going, and it gets better and better. I know, like, as a fan, it's, I'm gonna say that, yeah, but it does get better and better. So obviously, because I'm reading and collecting, and I love it so much. So, Yona, volume 43 is out soon, and I don't know if I can take it. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening with all my favorite characters, so we'll find out. Next is another manga series, and this one was a huge surprise to me this year. I don't remember how this came onto my radar, but I read the first volume, and like that, I was into it. I bought all 4 volumes, and I actually have volume 5, which came out recently. I haven't read it yet because, like I said, December has been a bad reading month for me, but I'm going to close out December with this because this is The Other World's Books Depend on the Bean Counter. This is the I think I was reading it and I was like, did I just find the gay magic made them do it isekai fantasy of my dreams? I did. It's silly, but also kind of, I don't know how to describe it. Isekai is essentially someone gets portaled to another world. And in this world, our main character is accidentally portaled along with a young woman who was meant to be the target of the portal. Magic is in everything in this world, and he has been, his entire adult life has been like a corporate slave. So he goes to this world and they're like, what do we do with you? I don't know. It's like a medievalish kingdom. And he's like, well, you have a kingdom, right? Do you have an accounting department? I'll work. So he works, and he, works himself, works himself to the bone, and he gets wind of like this magical potion that's supposed to pep you up, but he takes it constantly to keep himself awake and working until he finally feels bad and he starts to kind of overdose on it. And then our love interest is the head of like one of the guard kind of factions of the kingdom, and he finds him, and he already knows of him, but he finds him kind of ODing on the street because of the magic, and he uses his own magic to try to help him. But then they find out that kind of makes it worse, because coming from our world, our main character has no defense against magic, which is in everything. It's like in the air, it's in the food he's eating, it's in everything. He has no defense. So because our guard character used his magic in him to help him stave off the OD, he has to constantly inject him with his magic. And he has to constantly inject him with his magic via fluid. And take of that what you will. Yes. So it's silly. Magic made them do it is a trope that I have liked in the past. And in the past, when it has been Stargate Atlantis fanfic, aliens made them do it, has been the trope that I liked. So I like seeing it here. And I know that does sound like there are consent issues, but they are addressed in either volume 2 or 3. I think volume 2, those kind of consent issues are addressed as these two work towards figuring out the relationship between them. Like, first of all, they're kind of just like, okay, I guess we have to deal with this. And there isn't quite a romance, but the romance is slowly building. But they're also aware that a lot of what's happening between them is forced because of their circumstances. So they have to figure that out. And then things like politically, things are advancing. So I really love it. This is volume 5? Yeah, this is volume 5. I haven't read it yet, but look at them. So yeah, surprise favorite series that I have read this year. The other world's books depend on the bean counter. Lastly, my favorite series of the year, Hidden Legacy by Ilona Andrews. Here's the other Ilona Andrews. Urban fantasy, magic, I really like it. Like I said, they hit urban fantasy for me like no other. I enjoy it so much. I read all of Kate Daniels last year, loved it. That's why I'm reading all their stuff now. Hidden Legacy is essentially, what if like a couple hundred years ago, magic was introduced into people and those people started reproducing, and the idea of like there you'd have then like people who keep it within their genetic bloodlines. So you have these great magic houses, and we have our main character who is a private investigator. She keeps her magic low key, and she has a sister, cousins, her mom, her grandma. And in the first 3 books are about the first sister, Nevada, and her relationship with I forgot his name. But her relationship with him, and as their house begins to cement and grow in esteem in this world. And then the last 3 books, there's 6 books in a bridging novella, are about her younger sister and her romance and continuing the overall story. It's so good. I really liked it. I liked the romances. Well, the first book, the romance, I was kind of like, no. But I enjoyed them by the end. I really liked rooting for them. I liked the romance in the sister's romance a lot more from the start. But it's just so good. It's so satisfying. They write urban fantasy that I want to read, and I just highly recommend Ilona Andrews. Start with Kate Daniels or start with Hidden Legacy. Both are fantastic. Those have been the series. Those have been my honorable mentions. And here is the fun part. My top 10 favorite reads of the year. And yes, I do own all of these physically. Either I already owned it and luckily I loved it, or I read it via the library or an audio and I had to buy a copy to own. So these are in order from like my least favorite to my most absolute top favorite. If you've been watching for any amount of time, maybe you will know what my favorite book is, but we'll see. Okay, number 10 is The Woods All Black by Lee Mandello. Between this and I read Feed Them Silence last year, Lee Mandello is quickly becoming a auto-buy author. I do want to read Summer Suns by him. This is a historical fiction, kind of gothic, dark novella. All of those words essentially are anti-buzzwords for me, but I liked Feed Them Silence so much that I kind of trusted Lee Mandello's writing, and I was right to do that. This follows a trans man character who, post-World War I, I think, has come back to the US after experiencing, you know, kind of a life being out as a trans man, you know, after the war in France, come back to the US, and they join the, I forget, the Frontier Nursing Service, I think, to continue using their nursing skills and to have a job. And they are dispatched to this super incredibly rural Appalachian town. But when they get there, the vibes are off. Like, it seems like even though they requested a nurse, they no longer want him there. He has to dress more feminine to be a little safer and appeal to the people a little more. But, you know, this pastor has a chokehold on the town, and there's something in the woods going on. So I just really liked this. And even though a lot of that kind of stuff can feel a little too anxiety-inducing for me, like I'm not a huge fan of like a character going to a place where everybody hates them. That is, you have to have really great writing and a great story for me to really vibe with that. Thankfully, Lee Mandello does. I liked where this went with the monster in the woods. I will say that there is some erotic stuff in here, and I will let you take of that what you will. But this is fantastic with all the themes it's working with. Lee Mandello's writing is so good, and it's also good. It's so good. Read it. Read this or read Feed Them Silence. Just please check out Lee Mandello. He's doing great stuff. Next, number 9 was a surprise for me. This is The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. I think I picked this up because Bethany, a Beautifully Bookish Bethany, really liked it. And this is beautiful. It's so hard to see in this lighting, but it's like a rose gold foiled edge. It's the hardcover itself. It has the art. And this is a young adult, I would say, urban fantasy, lowercase u, lowercase f, urban fantasy. It's about these 3 girls. 2 of them are dealing with a lot of trauma and stuff and dabbling in magic. One of them, she wants to resurrect her sister, and the other is kind of like a billionaire's daughter, and she's just kind of dabbling with magic because she found a magic book, and the first time she tried something and went wrong, so she tried something again tried to find somebody to help her fix it, went wrong, so she is being like plagued by a demon, really gross body horror going on with her. We have the sister who is grieving her sister's death. And then we have our main character all 3 main characters. Then we have our character who is a witch, and she's grown up as a witch, and she makes what are called invocations that she has helped women out, women who are down on their luck, women who are running from something. Essentially, they kind of like tattoo these invocations onto their bodies. They do a very specific kind of magic. It's not overall magic, it's a specific thing. And it allows these women to take control of their lives or escape something, or like it gives them the power to survive in some fashion. But a lot of her former clients are starting to end up dead, and someone is carving the invocations out of their bodies. So the 3 of them find each other and then try to figure out what's going on. This is dark, but it's so good. Like, I was really shocked at how much I really liked this. The writing is great. The 3 characters and the character work is great. The magic is so interesting. The theming of what it's doing, the feminist theming is really good, but it doesn't really go over the top, doesn't feel forced. It's just so good. And I just don't read YA anymore, and I'm so glad that I took a chance on this because it's some of the best YA I've read in years. So The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. That is a fantastic cover. And again, rose foil. Yeah, it's beautiful. And our girls right there. Definitely check it out. If you're looking to dip your toes into YA in any fashion, any of that sounded interesting, go for it. Next was such a fun one. This is 8. This is Long Live Evil by Sarah Rees Brennan. This is a tongue-in-cheek satire, romantasy satire. Our main character, she is in our world, she is dying of cancer. She's approached by someone who says, what if you could go into the world of your favorite book and get this thing, and if you bring it back, you'll be cured of your cancer. She's like, okay, bet. So she goes, but she is incarnated in the body of the villainess of the first book, and she has to figure out how to survive. And she leans into the villainy of her character and starts to change the book along the way. I had so much fun with this. It is very campy. It does get to certain points where the camp kind of pushed the envelope for me, where it started getting a little like, oh, okay, can we bring this back a little bit? But I had so much fun overall. The ending, I'm not a romantasy reader. I don't know romantasy tropes. I don't know normal romance tropes. So if the ending was telegraphed for anybody who does read romantasy and the kind of books that this is signaling, I did not. And so I was fucking gagged by the reveal at the end. I was shocked. I was shook. In my original video talking about this, I kept in a clip where I had to pick up my phone and just record my feelings about it, like literally my shock about what happened. So I just really liked it for what it was doing. It was fun, it was campy, and I cannot wait for book 2. Number 7 is The Fireborn Blade by Charlotte Bond. This is a fantasy novella about a disgraced knight who figures the only way to really bring prestige back to her name is to go get a sword from a dragon. There's a lot more to it than that, but I think what I really loved about this is that we follow Maddie this night as, you know, she is going on this quest, and then we get, you know, a bit of flashbacks, but also interspersed throughout every chapter there is like a little something about previous knights and squires who have gone on dragon hunting quests themselves, the horrible shit that has happened to them. So it really builds up tension, but it also builds up the world around them. Maddie is a great character. There's some kind of like mystery of like what's going on with her in the present. And it's great. I had so much fun with this. I was really just having a good time. The ending was great. And there is a second novella. I do own it. I haven't read it yet, but I just had such a good time with this. I really loved it. And look how badass Maddie is. And that is the dragon that she gets the blade from. But look how badass Maddie is. And she lives up to that in this book, I promise you. The Fireborn Blade, number 7. Number 6 is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I finally dug into this series this year. I think I tried to read this when it first came out and I just bounced off it so hard. What made me bounce off it at the first time I tried it is what made me really love it this time. So once I was able to get into the story and get into the writing and what Stephen Graham Jones was doing specifically with the writing and this character, I understood and I just flew through this. I loved it. I think this is an absolute fucking masterpiece of character work. What he has done with his writing to put you like just so close to Jade in this is fantastic, like uncomfortably close at times. When you're reading this, you are Jade. Like it's just so, it feels like there's no separation between you and the character. You are her. I feel like that is such good work and it's so impressive how he does it in this. So I really, really, really enjoyed this. It is a slasher, a love letter to slasher films. But even if you are not a slasher film fan, yes, there's a lot of slasher films and Jade does relate to the world via slasher films. So you have to get on board with that. But you yourself don't really need to be a slasher film fan or fanatic to really get into it. I'm not. I know the basics. My husband is a slasher film fan, so maybe I know a little bit more than most people, but I still enjoyed this, even though I'm not like a big slasher fan. So you can get into it. There is buy-in to this story without being a slasher fan. But I just think it's just, the character work is so fucking good. The writing, the character work that he has done in this is just absolute top class. Highly recommend. All right, number 6 is a very, I think, underrated sci-fi novel. This came out last year, but I read it early this year. This is These Burning Stars by Bethany Jacobs. This is a space opera. Very queer, very just adventure action packed. And we follow a cast of characters who all have like interlocking reasons for what words am I looking for? We follow this cast of characters, and like, yes, there are reasons that we're following this specific cast of characters, but as the past is revealed and layers are peeled away from their past and their relationships, the interweaving ways that these characters like kind of have reacted to each other, interacted with each other, it's fantastic. Our main antagonist is Isak, and Isak is just an unforgettable character. Like, Isak is fucking crazy. I loved her. Just everything about this was fantastic. I think it's so underrated, and I think so many more people need to read it. So the essential story is that in this world, this kingdom, there are these families that are essentially big families that run the universe, galaxy, whatever. And something is found, there's a MacGuffin, that could essentially destroy this one family. And it's stolen by someone. And so we follow this character as she runs off and tries to sell it or whatever. And then we follow 2 characters who are tasked with, one of them belongs to the family, and the other is tasked to join her and try to track that thing down. And then there's a 4th character who is this kind of mysterious character who has ties with all 3 of them. So it's so good the way things come together. We do have like dual timelines, but the way those come together it's so good. I think this is just so underrated. Book 2 is out. I haven't read it yet because, like I said, this fall has been shit for my reading. And I'm saving the stuff that I'm really looking forward to when my reading like comes back to like my normal level. But just, I think this is so underrated. If you like sci-fi, give it a go. It's so good. It's so good. Please just give it a try. Number 4, The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst with the pretty, pretty lavender colors. I describe The Spell Shop as Sarah Beth Durst. She got the cozy fantasy prompt and she delivered. This, I think, is just for me and what I want out of cozy fantasy. This did it for me. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the main character. I enjoyed the little community that is building up around her. I enjoyed the slight tension of the story that's happening. I don't even like jam, but I enjoyed the jam making. I had such a good time with this. It was exactly what I needed when I was reading it. And this cover is beautiful. And there is a sequel coming out next year that is related in the same world. This did it for me. This just did it for me, and I enjoyed it so much. So I think this is great cozy fantasy. I know we did it as a book club read, and I know a lot of people had the exact same feelings as I did. Not that they hated it, but they had a lot less buy into it than I originally gave it from the start. But it is what it is, and I loved it for what it is, and I enjoyed it so much that it is here in the 4th spot. Okay, we're almost done. My shoulders are hurting, my voice is going, but we're getting to my top 3 books, my top 3 favorite books of the year, and these have just been absolute bangers. So number 3, The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. I read the Founders Trilogy last year. Loved it. I reread City of Stairs last year as well, or maybe this year. I think I reread City of Stairs this year. I read it once many years ago when it first came out. I never finished that trilogy, so I am working on finishing that trilogy. But I love every idea that Robert Jackson Bennett comes up with. Somehow he comes up with these absolutely interesting, fantastic worlds that are so cool and so innovative. And this is no exception. This is a mystery first fantasy series where it's kind of a Sherlock Holmesian, where we have our main character Din, who is kind of the Watson, and then we have our Sherlock character Anna, who is kind of a recluse, and she is seen as very weird, but you know, she's a great detective. The main catalyst, the mystery that they're trying to solve, is this man dies when a tree grows, magically sprouts out of him and grows, and he is murdered that way. This is a world where characters can be augmented in some way, in some fashion, to have essentially a type of magic, but it really just like really kind of augments their body in not great ways, and if you keep doing it, like, it's not really great for your body. Our main character Din has such an augmentation where he can sniff a vial of like a scent, and he essentially has eidetic memory. So he'll go to a crime scene, look at everything, remember everything, and then when he goes back, and he can sniff that same scent and recall every single thing that he saw, heard, smelled, tasted, touched. So that is his like magic power that he uses towards solving mysteries. In addition, in this world, the way the world is built, there is like the city, and there's land, and then there's sea, and there are kaiju rising out of the sea that occasionally try to come onto land and try to come to just wreak havoc on the land. And there's a great seawall where, like, so we get a taste of that in this book, and I want more of that. I hope we get more of that in book 2. Book 2 comes out, I don't remember which month. No, I remember. It comes out 2 days before my birthday, so I hope it's going to be a great book. And it seems like it's going to be a little bit more episodic than it is going to be purely serialized. So, like, there's a whole new mystery with the same characters, but a whole new mystery. And I hope that we get, like, episodic in terms of mystery, but then I hope we also get an underpinning of, like, continuation of something in the world. So, interesting world. So cool. Robert Jackson Bennett's writing is fantastic. It's not named as such, but the main character essentially has dyslexia. So there's that representation. And he is also queer. So I love this book so much. And I love Robert Jackson Bennett's writing. Like, at this point, he is a favorite author of mine, and I am so excited for book 2. Also, this cover. Can we just... Yeah, this cover. Fantastic. Okay, number 2. Number 2, this book and the book in the first place are books that really affected me in different ways. So this book I read, I think Patrick Leo reviewed it, and I was like, okay, and, you know, found a copy through my library on Hoopla, and I read through it, and I was like, I immediately bought a signed copy from the author's website because I had to own it. And this is Sister Samurai by Tatiana Obi. This is an anachronistic Black samurai story. It's anachronistic. The author doesn't care. You're going to deal with it. That kind of energy is just amazing. And essentially, it's the story of our main character, who is the samurai. And it takes place in a world where demons have been rising up and killing humans. We learn that her entire sect of the pink samurai, her sisters, were killed by demons, and she is the only survivor. And we follow her through a day in her life as she goes into town to get specialized magical ink that she uses in her fighting and in surviving. And on this day, people keep testing her, and we just we peel away layers about this world, about her grief, her survivor's guilt, everything. Like, it's so good. And it is unapologetically Black. It is unapologetic in everything it is doing. And it just, I'm not going to go into it because I have a whole really long review of this, and I will link it down below, including spoilers. And it just really, really, really hit me. It affected me. And I really cherish and adore how this may seem like a silly story on the surface of it, but there is so much more to it. There's so much more emotion and theming to it than you would expect. I really fucking love this, and this is just top tier storytelling to me. So beautiful. Also, just for the record, cherry blossoms are my favorite flower, so like this is just like a perfect cover for me. So yeah, Sister Samurai, my number 2 favorite read of the year. My favorite read of the year. This didn't hit me as emotionally as Sister Samurai did. This did like get me emotionally, but on Sister Samurai got me on a base level as a woman, as a Black woman. This got me on a level as a fantasy reader and a book lover, a storyteller, a storytelling lover. This is The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. My favorite book of the year. I read it in May. I knew it was going to be my favorite book of the year. I knew that it would take something special to supplant it. And Sister Samurai was almost that book. Almost. But I think what elevates this for me so much is that Simon Jimenez is playing so much with storytelling in this. So the basic concept, the basic, what is happening in the story is we have these two characters. One is a guard and one is kind of like an outcast. And they're both thrown together by circumstance and forced to flee across this land, dragging along the corpse of a goddess who the tyrants of the land, her sons, are trying to find and kill so they can keep her power. That's the basis of it. And this story of Kima and June, these two characters, is taking place within a dream that another character has. So we have this character who, unnamed character who is, I want to say they're in like Spain or something during like the rise of fascism, I think. And they are told stories of the old land. Like their grandmother used to tell them stories all the time of the old land. And the old land is the land that this is taking place in. But we do get like bits of story that kind of like puts us into a framework of where this character is in the real world. And then the character dreams. And in this dream, they're watching a play. But this dream is very real to them. And this play that is taking place on stage is the story of Kima and June. It's just layers on different types of storytelling. And it doesn't feel clunky. It doesn't feel strange. Like, it takes a second for you to really get into it. And I mean, the book does open up in a second person perspective, but it makes sense. And it's not all in that perspective. It's so good. I feel like saying it's so good is not enough, but it is. It's a fantastic story. It's emotional. It's gut-wrenching. It's gory and horrific, and there's a lot of love at the heart of it. Familial love, romantic love, love for your country, love for what you fight to believe in. This is the type of book that reminds me why I love reading and why I love stories, and really just, it's the kind of book that I will just point to and being like, yes, this is the pinnacle of playing with storytelling. This is someone who is a master at their craft, and this is only his second full novel. Like, that's incredible, first of all. But as his second full novel, Simon Jimenez has somehow just been able to play with storytelling in a way that is still evocative and interesting and engaging, and like, I never wanted to stop reading this. I could not stop thinking about it. I kind of want to reread it, and I can't. My voice is gone. I've been talking for so long. I can't sing this book's praises enough. I really can't. It's just so fucking good. And because of this, and I read The Vanished Birds last year, which is his sci-fi debut. And because of those two books, The Vanished Birds was like, it was 5 stars because it was fantastic. But this is like, it's also 5 stars, but like an elevated 5-star level that not many other books has reached for me. And The Spear Cuts Through Water. It is now in my top 5 favorite books of all time. Absolutely. I've had all year to think about that. It is. And if you like fantasy stories, if you like the art of storytelling, if you like interesting narratives, give it a shot if you haven't read it already. It's so well worth your time. If you don't get into it right away, I understand. But yeah, I loved it. And I am going to say, because of how I feel about this, if you don't like this book, if you give it a try and you don't like it, please don't tell me. Okay? So I have attached a lot of emotional attachment to this. So please, if you don't like it, just you can just say, you know, that didn't work for me, and just keep it to yourself. That's all I want to hear. I don't want to hear anything else. So yeah, The Spear Cuts Through Water and Sister Samurai, two very different types of books, but that really just hit that spot for me perfectly. And just my absolute, like, yeah, I have a top 10, but these two are like a step above the rest in terms of how much I have liked them, how much they have affected me. My best reads of the year, absolutely, bar none. So that's what I got. This has been fun. It's so much fun being able to make this video after watching BookTube for so many years and now being part of it. And I have been, you know, saving a bunch of videos to a playlist. I can't wait to watch everybody's favorites of the year. And it's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun talking about those books again. I think this has actually made me it's creating the slope to get me out of my reading slump. Because it just reminded me like how much I fucking love reading. It just reminded me why I like reading and why I love books and why I'm making these videos. This is why I love reading. Like, that's it. That's all. That's it. Thank you for watching. If you're here for the first time, thank you for checking my video out. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think about any of these books on this list. Are any of the books that I talked about in this, are any of them on your favorites of the year? Is there any that you haven't read that you're going to try? I would love to hear about it. If you don't have anything to say, if you'd like to leave an emoji, cherry blossom for Sister Samurai. Thank you, thank you, thank you again. I hope your reading year has been fantastic. I hope we're all going into 2025 with fantastic reading. And I will catch you guys on the flip side. Bye.